going on to the cornerback room, let's go back to the stealing yards aspect of it. Another way to steal yards, your corners need to be flying downhill against the run.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's how you turn a 0 yard gain into a -1 yard gain. You turn a 3 yard gain into a 1 yard gain. Maybe it doesn't even have to be anything that sexy. Turn an 8 yard gain into a 6 yard gain. That's the difference, is the way that these corners fly downhill on the run, and that's also something that you don't find very much in this league, right?
Mm-hmm.
Corners typically don't love flying downhill. It puts their bodies at risk.
Sure.
Of all the positions, corner might be the most where your athletic abilities are your livelihood, because you take the best athlete on the field and a wide receiver and ask them to do it backwards. You have a cornerback,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, it's you lose something at corner from injury, a lot of times your career's done. So it's hard to find these guys who are willing to go that heavy on the run, to be that aggressive downhill, or it can be. I shouldn't say it necessarily is hard, but it can be hard to find those guys sometimes. And they've found guys like that, and guys who are just flying to the football right now. Again, it's similar to the linebackers, but a little bit different of an aspect. Down the stretch last year, it was like the light started to click for these guys. And again, it comes down to these landmarks to some degree, of like hitting their landmark and knowing their checks, knowing, okay, is there anyone over here? No. Okay, so then I'm going to drift this way. Is there anyone over there? Okay, no. So I'm drifting backwards and covering the honey hole in the cover two. One of my goals this offseason was to learn coverages better, and I've gotten a lot better with them, but there's just so much to understand. So it's
Oh
like
yeah.
the amount of checks that the corners specifically have, it's quite a bit that you ask of them, as far as diagnosing pass versus run, being able to get downhill when it's run, but not being fooled by the play action either. And where are the route concepts going? Is this guy coming across the field, coming into my area? Or do I need to drop back into, like I said, that honey hole in the cover two? Or am I, deep third of the field and saying, okay, but there's a crosser coming to my third, but I've already trailed this guy over here. Now I need to make up ground back the other way. Like, there's just a lot of reading that goes on within any defense. That's not specific to Eberflus's, but it felt like Tyreek Stevenson specifically really hit a stride down the stretch there of saying, okay, I'm confident in what I'm seeing and what I need to be doing when I see it, that I can go attack the football down. We saw the results of that down the stretch, and they were really nice.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, you mentioned right the Bears finding these guys that they need to fit the system. Tyreek was a guy they traded up to go get in the draft last year. Kyler Gordon
Mm-hmm.
was a guy that they used with their first pick in the draft with in Poles' first draft to get in the building. And it just doesn't hurt that you already had a guy like Jalen Johnson already in the building who showed that he could do that kind of stuff when he was in college at the University of Utah. They have a really good corner room. And I think, too, with each of these guys, Q, you talk about, right, how do you take away that extra yard or two? Don't give a receiver a clean release. And all these guys are long corners. They have that length to be able to jam guys at the line, even if it's just a hand. That hand, especially for some receivers in the league, if you're not AJ Brown, if you're not one of these big, just center of gravity kind of guys where you're not going to easily get knocked off your route, that little half a second difference can make a difference, especially if it's timing route. And then that's when this defense takes their opportunity to go after the ball and be ball hawks. And you can see it in the numbers here. 4 interceptions from your two lead corners in Stevenson and Johnson apiece last year. A lot of that is because they took those calculated risks when they knew they could disrupt timing with how this team looks. And we mentioned with the linebackers gelling together as a unit in the coverage, especially when you got zones to be responsible for. That's a huge part of it as well.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see. I'm gonna look this up as I'm talking right now, because I see for Tyreek Stevens, 9 touchdowns allowed, which is not good, but it's a rookie. It's a rookie who
Sure.
I think a lot of that came in the first half, maybe first 2/3 of the season. And like something clearly clicked for him at some point last year, where it was like, okay, he's seeing it now. He's seeing the
Mm-hmm.
field now. James Bradbury was the only corner to allow more touchdowns last year with 10, but lower PFF grading coverage. Michael Davis also allowed 9, lower PFF grading coverage. Tyson Campbell allowed 8, lower PFF grading coverage. Same with Cam Sutton, allowed 8, much lower PFF grade. So the grade is telling you, yes, he had some busts, but he also had enough really impressive moments that you can feel good about it. When a guy's grading higher than everyone else around him, it means that there's probably more flashes in there, right? There's more
Mhm.
boom plays to justify the busts. And not that I'm hoping that he, turns into a Deron Bland with the Cowboys, where it's like, 9 pick sixes, but was burned for 50-yard touchdowns 10 times. Like, but
Mhm.
there's I really do think what we saw from him last year was sustainable growth, not boom bust growth, where it's just going to keep getting wider and wider.
I think we got to give, some light to your tweet, earning some love from one of the Bears defensive backs. You were talking about the play where Tyreek Stevenson made the interception against Cleveland on what would have been a David Njoku touchdown. He was open
Might have
in
been
the
the
end
best
zone.
Bears play of the year.
It
Like,
might
that
have
was
been.
incredible.
And hearing Jaquan Brisker's response to that and quote tweeting your post saying, he thought it was over. And then all of a sudden he saw 29 flash out of nowhere. And I think, like you said, right, something clicked for Tyreek late in the season, but you started seeing him probably because he just simply got comfortable and understanding what his responsibility was on any given play. It allowed those instincts to start taking over in those instances because the whole design of the Tampa 2 system is to take the football away. If you're not taking the football away, it's not going to work.
Right.
So once you get comfortable in understanding this is what I need to do and this is what I should do, then once you get comfortable with doing that and it becomes just natural, kind of habitual, I guess, for lack of a better term, for that player, then you can let those instincts take over. And now you started to see it last year, I think, with guys even like Jalen Johnson, who I remember the amount of shit he got for not having any interceptions. I think a lot of that was just largely what he was asked to do in the defense. Now, where a defense is saying, hey, we want you to be a ball hawk and go get it and take more calculated risks, you're starting to see some of that athleticism and instinct take over in a lot of these guys. And I think Tyreek Stevenson's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one thing I just noticed, I didn't even think about checking this, but we're talking about the stealing a yard, stealing 2 yards. The average depth of tackle on run plays for this entire cornerback room is at least 0.9 yards better than league average.
That's a big deal.
That speaks to exactly what we were saying of like they're stealing a yard here, a yard there. Every time a cornerback made a tackle on a run play, they stole a yard, like based on the average.
Yeah, but again, and there's going to be instances where I can recall a couple of drives last year where maybe it's a swing route or it's a pitch to the outside where you would see a Jalen Johnson or a Tyreek Stevenson or even a Kyler Gordon flying downhill and make the play in the backfield. And when you're able to steal those 2 and 3 yards, especially on like a second down and maybe 7, where the defense is just the offense is just trying to pick up maybe 3-4 yards and work themselves into that third and manageable. When you come downhill and you make a play in favor of your defense and a negative play for the offense, now all of a sudden it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, maybe even 3rd and 10. And that makes a huge difference on a lot of drives. And especially, right, we talked a little bit about it as, we're going to talk a little bit about it too, about the crocodile punter, but you talk about flipping field position. That's a huge part of flipping field position for your offense.
Yeah. And I mean, so first of all, Kyler Gordon in there, I think Kyler Gordon a lot you saw that from. Like one of the big things in this defense is you don't have the Sam backer out there. And like any defense that's running nickel, which is the whole NFL for most of the time now,
Mm-hmm.
that's a part of it. But especially in this defense, they really want their nickel corner to charge downhill against the run hard off the edge and just really be locking that zone up. And that's something Kyler Gordon has really started to excel at. It's something that he's really gotten good at. And similar to the comment about TJ Edwards blitzing from depth, Kyler Gordon is a nightmare from depth. The way he flies off that edge, like, and they did some similar stuff with that. They did some stuff where they have a D tackle dropping to replace where TJ Edwards was, and they have Edwards and Gordon coming on the blitz, and it's like, oh, this is fun. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now we're talking. And then it was like week 18 in Green Bay, they stopped doing that completely. It was like, what are we doing? It
Mm-hmm.
was so good, but that's a different conversation. But Kyler Gordon in that nickel spot, that very important nickel spot in this defense, there's still a lot for him to figure out there. Like that, it's a very demanding role they ask of him. He's playing a lot more man than everybody else. He's without top end speed, I guess you'd say. And a lot of nickel corners probably don't have the top of the top end speed. Otherwise, they'd be playing outside. But his bizarre body flexibility really does. It's a real asset in the nickel where you don't have the sideline as a boundary, right? You don't have that protection of the sideline to use to your advantage. You need to protect left and right equally. And that's something that his body flexibility becomes so valuable in that aspect because he can make up a step if he's off to the wrong side, he can. It's not speed, right? It's the ability to be off balance and get on balance quickly.
Yeah, it's the freak athleticism in his those draft scores, right? That we talked about ad nauseum throughout the draft process. He's over the last couple of years here, and why Ryan Poles has been targeting players like that, especially at premier positions like corner and receiver and whatnot. When you have that guy, and I was actually listening to an interesting clip. I believe it was Tom Brady on The Herd, and he was talking to about getting the ball to your playmakers and what that looks like. And he said he was like, look, the receiver has the sideline he has to worry about. Like if he's running an out route, he's only got 5 or 6 yards maybe to work with before he's out of bounds. Same thing applies for a corner, right? Like they have less sideline they have to worry because that is a natural boundary. But it was always easier for Tom Brady, as he said, to get the ball to Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, and Rob Gronkowski because they're in the middle of the field and they have those 12 to 18 yards of cushion from sideline to sideline to work with on any given play. It's the same applies for Kyler Gordon as a nickel corner. He has more responsibility, more ground to cover. Like you said, almost as a hybrid Sam linebacker in today's NFL, where he has to be able to make plays in the run game, but he also has to be able to run with, again, most slot receivers are quick, elusive guys who are good in short space. And in return, Gordon has to be that guy. But when you see him making the backflips and doing Spider-Man jumps, you kind of get a quick understanding of why he's becoming so good at that role. And I think he's just going to continue to get better.
Bring it back one more time to the stealing yards here and there.
Mm-hmm.
That's especially important on the running downs, on the first down, on the second down, because the ultimate goal is for this defense, in my opinion, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7 plus, really 3rd and 8, because so many route concepts are structured around 7-yard breaks, where the first opportunity for a quarterback to get rid of the ball is at 7 yards. If you force a team into 3rd and 7 plus, it's a lot harder for them to get into the situations that they want to be able to take advantage of, that they have a lot of experience taking advantage of, and running plays for. There aren't many good plays for 3rd and 8, and that's how you get turnovers, right? That's how 100%. If you're saying we can force a drive of 5 series of downs, so was it 50 yards? So 5 series of downs, and if one of those we can force them into 3rd and 8, we like our chances of getting the football.
100%, and it's something that I've always said, especially if I'm ever on the mic for a college game or for any kind of game. What is deemed a quality play for the offense is 4 yards. Because in theory, if you're getting 4 yards of play, you're getting 12 yards a series and you're converting first downs. The same idea applies, though, because of the playbook. Because exactly what you said, Q. There's a lot of plays for for anything in short. There's a lot of plays for, especially 3rd down. There's a lot of plays for 3rd and intermediate. But as soon as you get to 3rd and long, that playbook shrivels up in terms of what you can call in those situations. And just mathematically, Q, if we're talking about calculated risks like we were a little bit earlier, over the course of 5 or 6 series in a half, let's say, if you're forcing a team into that 3rd and 8, they might run the same play twice. And that's another opportunity for you to get a takeaway because it's something you've already seen on the field, not something where, they have a Rolodex to dig through on those 3rd and short and 3rd and intermediates. It's only a little couple of sticky notes at 3rd and long that any team has to try and convert on a first down. So, and then when you're stealing those yards on the tackle, because it is breaking at 7 yards, you're getting a lot of 4th and 1s in the event that you can't take the football away.
Especially if it worked last time.
Yeah.
NFL coaches love to spam shit that works.
They'll go right back to it 100%. If it works, they'll go back to it. And that's where you need if you're a smart football player, which I think this Bears defense has a lot of those guys, especially now in the back 7, that's where those guys come into play with their instincts and just their innate ability to play football. And that's where you get takeaways.
Or you just know that Matt LaFleur is probably going to be sitting there, say that they get him in 3rd and 8, and he's going to be saying, well, we burned this kid last year on 3rd and 8 with this concept. Let's see if he remembers that. Yeah. And he's got to, but that's where it's also in division games, it can be so important. And that's probably how Lovie Smith got such quality out of division matchups, that like the defense had burned in their memory what the teams did on those downs and distances, the money downs, 3rd and long. It's like, that's where you got to capitalize. I think the Lovie Bears defenses knew what to expect from some of the in division coordinators. And that's what this defense you're hoping is going to start to do here, of like, okay, we know Matt LaFleur, 3rd and long, this is what he likes to do. Matt LaFleur is going to be a tougher one to crack. But Ben Johnson maybe, or Kevin O'Connell, it's like, we know what they've shown us the last 4 times we faced them in these looks. We've seen it all. It's about getting those reps, though, getting those chances to see it all.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And when, when you can force teams to completely show their hand, it's just going to favor you, especially as the game wears on, right? We saw, especially late in the season, in some of those games where this Bears defense stood up and really held teams off and gave them a chance to win. And that was because they were taking advantage of those money downs and knowing, hey, we know what we saw the last time out in this situation. Look for that. And if it was there, they took advantage of it.